Hi, welcome back to Faith and Conviction, and I'm your host, Ray Harris. I want to welcome you to this week's Torah portion. We are looking at Torah portion 43. It's the last portion in the book of Numbers, and it is Masa'ei. And I probably botched up my Hebrew. My apologies. I am definitely trying to get better, but this is my first time through trying to pronounce all these Hebrew names. But it's important that we see what's going on here. Now remember, we're in the book of Numbers, but we are in the last portion, and it's Numbers 33 verse 1 through 36 verse 13. And in Hebrew, the book of Numbers is Bamidbar, meaning in the wilderness. So it's kind of cool. We finished all these journeys, and next week we'll start something new, at least for our new book. Now our key word is the second word in Numbers 33 verse 1, and it's Masa'ei. Now what we find here is a very interesting issue this week. And so usually I'm taking the Hebrew, going through the Greek Old Testament, finding it into the Greek New Testament, and bringing it into English, and seeing how all these things work out. This week we're going to look at some concepts here about translations, and we're going to make a conceptual application to the New Testament of these words that we're seeing. So I think you'll find this interesting, but it is going to help us understand, again, the importance of translation and interpretation. So the Strong's number for this is H4550. H4550. Now Brown Driver Briggs tells us that this Hebrew word means a pulling up. Like you would pull up your stakes from a tent, and you would fold it, and you would move on. So that would be a way of calling it breaking camp. That's another definition. It also means setting out. Now you may not break camp to set out, but you may be getting in your automobile, or in ancient days past, putting yourself on your horse or whatever, and you're setting out to go someplace. So that is also called a journey. And journeys can take place in stages. Like if someone was going to go across the country, the United States, they would do it in stages. I doubt unless you're taking an airplane, then you can do it in one stage, from one coast to the other, and you're done. But if you're traveling by car, you're going to do it in stages. If you're traveling by foot, you even have more stages. So it's interesting how you would complete your journey in stages. So these things are important to understand for this word, and why, when we look at all of these definitions this week and all of the applications, that it looks different through the various translations. So one of the things that I did find is that we want to look at, again, the King James, and we want to see what's going on there and how these different things unfold. So the King James says in Numbers 33 verse 1, these are the journeys of the children of Israel. And again, journeys is keying back to our Hebrew word. Now the Complete Jewish Bible says these are the stages. Now remember, stages is part of the definition of the Hebrew word. And the Jewish Publication Society, this one here, says these were the marches of the Israelites. So they marched from one location to another location, from that location to another location, and they call it a march in the Jewish Publication Society. The Apostolic Bible Polyglot, which I'm using to find the Greek of the Old Testament, calls it post. I'm not really sure why that is, but that's the word he used there. And then the Greek word there is staphmoi. And it's one word of many that the Greek Old Testament is going to use. So I want to set the stage right here. We have 5 different translations if you include the Greek Old Testament. All 5 of them seem to be using different words. Now what's interesting here is that when we look at this, if my studies and my memory is correct, all of the words for this only occur in the Old Testament in the books of Moses. So the scrolls of Moses are the only works that contain this Hebrew word. And in the King James, it's always journey, journeys, plural, journeying, like you're on a journey, or ing, or journeyings with an ings. So the King James here is consistent for us in what it's trying to convey with this Hebrew word. Now these other translations are going to do it a little bit differently. So I looked at all 12 of these instances, and there were several passages that I wasn't sure about. So I'm going to try and have these notes down at the web page for you at faithandconviction.org at this video. So take a look there and see what kind of notes I have there. Maybe this will help a little bit and keep our video kind of tight and to the point. When we go over to King James, again, they're all a variation of journey. Now the Complete Jewish Bible says things like travels, in stages, to break camp, to travel, all kinds of things. And they have stages in plural, traveled in the past tense. And the Jewish Publication Society, which is this text that I use, says by stages. But it also uses the words journeys or in motion. And in one instance it has order of march. It also uses again the word marches. So it's actually kind of interesting how the Jewish Publication Society wants to do it. Now when we get over into the English translation of the Greek, of the Hebrew, the Apostolic Bible Polyglot uses words like broke camp, marchings, to lift away, departure, post, stages. And in the Greek of the Old Testament, there's at least 3, maybe 4, and if somebody does some more word studies on this, maybe more words to translate this Hebrew word for journeyings that we find in the King James. Now, why do I bring all this up? Now, we could sit here and we could look at the definition of each Greek word this time, but I'm going to choose not to do that. The reason why I'm not doing that is because I really want to concentrate on this idea of interpretation and context. Because while the King James is consistent, it always uses journey, journeys, journeying, or journeyings, that may not help us when we read the context. Because when I was studying this, I could see, oh, okay, so they broke camp and they went their way. Now see, that's a little bit different idea. Just because they're on a journey doesn't convey that they have torn down their camp and gone on their way. Which is interesting when it says they broke camp. Because they have to fold up the tabernacle. They have to actually do quite a lot of things to make these millions of people move from one camping location to another. It is kind of, not military, but it is type of a march. They are working together to get from one place to another. So all of these things convey major ideas of the movement of these people. And this is powerful and it is very important. Now what we don't see in the King James is we get an idea of a journey. And journey kind of can be flavored a little bit depending on your travel experiences or my travel experiences, what we may consider a journey. But when we see the word journey, I hesitate because I wonder if we think about the magnitude of the work that it took to break camp and to actually get these people from one location to another. And that is powerful, and that is a tremendous amount of work. So when we're looking at translations, the translators, even in the Greek Old Testament, are looking at the Hebrew, of course. But they're also hopefully reading the context of this Hebrew word. What exactly is going on with this situation? How is this helpful to this word? Just because this Hebrew word has a generic meaning and is applicable in different ways, doesn't mean that that generic meaning is the only meaning that we use all the time. And that's why we find things like the Complete Jewish Bible saying in stages and travels and to break camp, where this here says by stages or journeys or in motion, order of march. These things are important. It flavors the text even though we have one single Hebrew word. So this one word can be understood in several different ways according to context. This is actually a very important lesson to understanding the scriptures, whether you were studying the Hebrew, the Aramaic, or the Greek. Context helps define the words and how those words are being used and why those words are used the way they're used. So interpreting the original words, the Hebrew, the Aramaic, and the Greek, is actually a very difficult and complex task. And that's why I recommend that you have as many translations as you use. So am I a King James only fan? No. I study lots of English translations. I use several different translations. This one here is from a Jewish point of view, and it has very specific nuances to it, and it's good. And a complete Jewish Bible is from a Jewish point of view by a gentleman who believes that Jesus is the Messiah. So he has flavors and nuances in the text, and that is powerful. All of this is important though, because we're trying to understand the communications written long ago. And one of the ways in which we do that is definitely by context. But context lends to interpretation, and it is interpretation that gives translation. And it's the translations that have all these very different meanings. And when we see all these different meanings in the translations, we begin to argue with each other. Who did it right? Were they right? Who's the most accurate? Who's giving the best credibility to God's intent? These are actually very profound arguments and needed discussions. So just keep that in mind. So how do we connect it over to the New Testament? Just going to do it in a conceptual way. Jesus took his disciples and he gave them the limited commission. And he worked in a one stage. But then at the end of Matthew, he says here, we call it the Great Commission. He goes out to the world. So there's the initial stage where he sends out. Then there's a larger stage when it sends out. Now, if we look at how the gospel has unfolded, it also went out in stages. And where did it begin? Jerusalem. And it has gone out from Jerusalem in stages to encompass the entire world. So this is important, and it's crazy cool to see how all these words play together and express concepts that you and I can discuss and see how God works. So I hope it's been a blessing to you this week. Until next time, continue to seek God, know Messiah, find hope.